You're listening to the UM3D podcast, where we explore fresh ideas and real-world experiences that shape how we teach and learn. Recorded in the podcast studio at McWhirter Library, we bring you conversations with educators and experts to help you design, develop, and deliver high-quality instruction. In this episode, Trish talks with instructional designer Dr. Sarah Marshall to break down the fundamentals of pedagogy. From backward design to practical tools like course planning sheets, they explore how to align goals, objectives, assignments, and assessments for more effective teaching. Whether you're online or in person, this episode offers clear, actionable tips to help you design courses that truly support student success.
Welcome to the UM3D podcast, where we share strategies to advance online teaching and learning. I'm your host, Trish Lang, and today we're diving into pedagogy basics. Pedagogy is the theory and practice of teaching. There's so much to cover with pedagogy, but today's goal is to start with the basics, including course design, such as course goals, lesson objectives, and aligning assignments. Today we're joined by Dr. Sarah Marshall, an instructional designer with UM3D. In addition to being an ID and having taught at the university level, Sarah has the unusual distinction of actually having worked for many years as a K-12 special education teacher. Not many people make that jump from teaching K-12 to college, Sarah, but I think that makes your perspective especially pertinent. Teachers are specifically trained in pedagogy, but not our college faculty. And this is where issues often arise, right?
Absolutely, that's true. Most graduate programs do have some kind of teaching skills type of course that their grad students have to take if they're planning to teach at the higher ed level. But those often neglect things like lesson planning and how to create effective assessments. What are learning objectives and why are they important? Things like that. I do think that doesn't necessarily mean that faculty aren't great teachers. A lot of them have just intuitively a knack for teaching and they care so much. And of course, they're great researchers, so they learn a lot on their own. But I think that at the higher ed level, there's just more and more being put upon faculty in terms of service, in terms of research, in terms of course load. And whatever we can do to support them, I think will ultimately lead to better courses and better instruction.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's why working with an instructional designer can shorten that need to learn so much to be a formally trained teacher. So when you're working with faculty in particular, who may or may not have had this formal training, what's your general approach to designing a new course with them or revising an existing one?
Well, I think the first thing is that I want to hear what the course is about, what the goals of the course are. Normally, there's some kind of course description. Of course, we need that for the catalog. But a lot of times, faculty aren't really very clear on what they want students to be taking from a course, what those goals are going to be overall for the course. So I do want to hear what those are. I want to know that they are measurable. Sometimes we have goals like students will understand such and such and such. But what does that mean? How are they going to understand? Are they going to list something? Are they going to be able to identify something in a sort of multiple choice format? Do they need to create something like a project or a paper or some kind of experiential learning activity? So I really want to know how they're going to think about assessing those goals. And then I want to think about breaking them down further for each kind of lesson or module into learning objectives and thinking about how we're going to scaffold up to those bigger goals.
So let me just grab what you just said there. You said two different things, two big things. One was course goals, and the other was lesson objectives. And I find people get these confused all the time.
You know, going back to what college faculty aren't really taught in terms of pedagogy, a lot of times, and, you know, I was just as guilty of this as anyone else when I taught at the college level, despite having training in it. We go in to teach a course, do a lecture, whatever. We don't necessarily have a learning objective for that particular lesson, but they can be extremely helpful because it tells us and our students what they should be learning that day. And that can really help students to reflect on what they've learned and make sure that they know what they need to know to be successful in the class.
And this is so important, especially when you're teaching something that has multiple sections.
Right.
So what if we're teaching a class and I'm covering the history of raisins, but the person next to me does the history of prunes, and yet everyone takes the same test and it's all on raisins, right? We're in trouble then. We got to make sure that we're all covering the same topics. And we just like to breeze in there because we know our raisins, we know our prunes, we know our dried fruit, right. And we're just there to expound upon them.
Right. And I think, I think sometimes for some disciplines, the learning objective can actually be a little bit more structural than that. So maybe it's not about the content, but it's about what we do with the content. So the content itself might not be the learning objective, depending on the discipline. Think about algebra, for example. Maybe we're learning, it doesn't really matter what numbers are in there, but we're learning how to find the value of the variable. Or, my home discipline, philosophy, it might not matter exactly which thinker we're looking at, but we might want to be able to figure out the argument regardless of which text we're looking at. So I think, sometimes when faculty hear they have to have a quote learning objective, they are like, I think they feel a little bit hamstrung in their teaching. And I think what our job is to show them like you already have a learning objective in mind. You just haven't made it explicit. And making it explicit can help you and your students. So let's do that.
Okay, how does it help your faculty when they actually know their lesson objective?
First of all, it helps them to make sure that they're creating assignments and particularly assessments that are actually measuring what they want their students to have learned. A lot of times, and we see this all the time with especially writing, and particularly if we're using any form of AI to create our assessments or our rubrics, AI really likes to grade students on their writing mechanics. And if you are teaching a writing course, by all means, that's very important. And if you're teaching a particular disciplinary writing course, maybe you're teaching a psych course where students really need to learn how to write in APA format. That's fair. But if you're teaching a course that writing isn't one of your course goals, should we really be grading students on their writing skills, or should we be thinking about something else? And that's a question that I always ask faculty because maybe writing is important, but they haven't made that clear. And so I think we need to make that clear from the beginning.
Right. And is writing important for every single assignment? So I always think about discussion boards that ask for students to respond in APA format or, tell me exactly what page number. And I think the faculty think they are circumventing the students using AI when they ask them to respond and tell me what page number. But that's not really a discussion board.
Right. I've seen this a lot too. And I think when I see it, I really want to ask faculty, like, what are we doing with these discussion boards? Are these really more of a peer review essay type of assignment? Or is this, meant to be an actual discussion? Because in a class discussion, where we're all contributing and thinking kind of off the cuff, no one's looking, most people aren't going to tell you the page number from which their thinking comes, or they're not going to cite something in a particular format. So, and I do think that that's important in a course. So if we're talking about online learning, we need to create some kind of informal space where students can have the freedom to think out loud and make mistakes and try new things without it having to be so formalized.
Yeah, I think that's a really good example of I've got a learning objective. Is this assessment meeting that objective, or is it doing something that I had no intention of it doing in the first place?
Yes.
Do you ever use or do you recommend a particular framework like Bloom's taxonomy or backwards design when writing objectives?
Yes, I do. I usually always share some infographic of Bloom's taxonomy with my faculty when we're thinking about learning objectives and course goals, because it's just super helpful. I still use it when I'm trying to write course goals.
And that infographic is that classic pyramid, right?
Yes.
With the easier ways of an assignment, or the simpler ways to understand something on the bottom. Ooh, and I just used the word understand. And the more difficult ways to prove that you have mastered, good one, mastered the learning objective at the very pinnacle.
I love the ones that have 20 verbs for each level of the pyramid, because sometimes, when I'm writing, a lot of times I'm just opening up a tab and I'm like, synonyms for this, and so a lot of times we have a good sense of what we want the students to learn, but having that list of verbs can help us pinpoint exactly what we want them to take from it.
Yeah, and it's better definitely to get those verbs out of Bloom's than to ask AI to write that lesson objective for you.
Yes, absolutely.
Because what is AI going to give you? Understand.
Yes.
And why is it giving you understand?
Because that's what we've done for, since forever.
It's carrying on the mistake.
Yes.
Perpetuating it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I think everyone understands we dislike understand to be used in any sort of objective. Prove it. Don't understand it. Prove to me that you understand it. All right, so Bloom's great verbs can really help you figure out how to create a measurable and actionable objective.
Right. And backward design is also helpful a lot of times when we think about assessments that might not have gone very well, especially with a redesign. We're thinking about a course that's been on the books for a while. It's been taught several times. Maybe faculty are bringing it to us because with AI, they aren't really sure that their assessments are valid anymore. Or a lot of things have changed in the field and they want to update the content. Or, the last time this course was updated was back when we had eCourseware, and Canvas has a lot more capabilities now. So we want to look into some new tools or things for engagement. So one of the things that we look at is, did this assignment or this assessment go well? Like, what is working, what's not? And if it's not working, then we can kind of look back and think about why that might be. So what is the learning objective that this assessment is assessing? And is the assessment really measuring that learning objective or not? So that's a way that we can also think about reevaluating courses and whether or not they're effective.
And you don't even really need an instructional designer to help you with that part. You just get to think about any assignment you've ever given that did not go as planned.
Oh, absolutely.
And that is the assignment you need to start working on the most.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when we're talking about pedagogy, when talking about objectives and assessments, it can be really overwhelming. So do you have any advice to give people on how to start off small when they're talking about either redoing a course or even starting from scratch? What are the simplest steps to start with?
Oh, well, we have this wonderful course planning sheet that we've created and updated recently. And that's a really great way to start. It starts with the course goals, normally 3 to 5 of those. So you start with those and what are those going to be, honing those. And then it has, 15 rows where you think about what learning objectives for each week or each module are you going to be teaching? How do those scaffold up to or ultimately allow students to master the course goals? What content will you use to teach those learning objectives? What kinds of activities and or assessments are you going to do? And then once you've completed that course planning sheet, you're really in a good spot to have basically everything you need for your syllabus, and you're ready to put stuff into Canvas.
That's fantastic. Could we use this course planning sheet for in-person classes as well, or is this an online only thing?
Oh, absolutely. You can use it for in-person courses. Like, just shout out, we do not only do online learning here at UM3D. So if you're teaching a course on the ground and something isn't working for you, or you want to try something new, or you have a question, reach out to us, please. We love to work with on-ground courses as well as online courses.
And we also consult just on single assignments too. So maybe you don't want to tackle an entire project of doing a whole new course or revising that course that someone else taught that has been handed to you and you do not like. We can do just one assignment to see if we can get that up to speed. And a lot of times I find that once you've reworked one assignment, the next one you redo is just easier and easier and easier.
Great.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us on the UM3D podcast. Today we explored the foundations of pedagogy, including how to craft clear learning objectives, align them with assignments, and reevaluate courses to strengthen teaching and learning. A big thank you to Dr. Sarah Marshall for sharing her expertise and practical strategies. If you're ready to take the next step in course design, whether online, hybrid, or in person, UM3D is here to support you. For more information and resources, visit us at memphis.edu/UM3D.